Welcome. We are doing lightning talks now. So the way this is going to work is that we have 6 speakers, each of whom have 5 minutes to tell you their story. There's some technical challenges. We're going to try to move it along briskly. We'll try to take one question between each speaker while the other speaker comes up and gets ready to go. If there's time at the end, then we can do more questions for any of the speakers. Okay? Okay, first speakers, Nate and Peter.
Peter.
Yeah. Thanks, Ned. Hey. Okay, hello everybody. We're going to talk about a new video X block for OpenEdX. So my name is Nate Ani. I'm with AppSembler, and this is
Peter Koblikov.
Peter from Raccoon Gang. So what's the problem? Well, if you've used OpenEdX before, you probably noticed that the default is YouTube. The problem with YouTube is that your videos are not protected when you put them on YouTube. It's an advertising model, meaning that people can, even if it's unlisted, they can still get the URL, they can share that URL with their friends, and your IP is now in the public domain. The other problem is that the S3 videos, you can only have one, which means if you want to have one video that's optimized for mobile, another video optimized for desktop, you have to pick. So the video player can really only play one video. The other problem is if you use, let's say, Brightcove or Wistia, they'll give you a HTML embed code that you can drop in your OpenEdX site. But that video player is probably not compatible with the built-in player. It doesn't have the same features, and you have these embed codes sprinkled all throughout your OpenEdX site. So if the API changes, you have to go through your entire course and replace all those embeds with something else. This is a problem that was affecting a lot of our customers, and so we put our heads together. We said, what can we do about this? And 2 of our customers stepped up to sponsor what we call a feature sponsorship model. So they're basically cost-sharing the development of a new video X block. We got together with Raccoon Gang, who had some experience doing videos in OpenEdX, so they were our development partner. And we're going to show a short video of the functionality of the new video X block. So I'm going to hand over to Peter.
Yeah, I will do some comments. So we can make an X block. We embed just the URL of the YouTube. It's simple. We have all the features edX player has. Now we can just get the captions and transcripts from YouTube. Interactive transcripts as well. So the functionality is basically the same. We can put Wistia. It will work like the same as YouTube. We can do that with Brightcove, with Vimeo. Yeah, here is the dog. The Brightcove is the most cool one, I will tell you. Because we have integration with 3Play Media, which is the place you can handle your transcripts. Here how we can embed it. You can see the transcripts appeared. And the most crucial thing is that we can now encrypt the video only in Brightcove. Which is very important for the corporate clients. Yeah. And basically, we can see that now video is encrypted.
Yeah, great.
Okay. I have another slide. Oh, yeah, we have one slide. Yeah, so like very short, we have a support of YouTube, Vista, Vimeo, HTML5. We have a new feature with the integration of 3Play Media, which is like cool for integrate, like for corporate clients. We fetch all the features video in edX has: speed up, speed down, set start and time, accessibility features, interactive transcripts and captions, and handouts.
So, how can you get involved? If you're a course creator, we have a demo site where you can play around with it, try it out. If you're a developer, the code is up on GitHub. We welcome patches and new features. If you would like to fund the development of other video hosting providers or new features, come talk to us. And lastly, we're having a Birds of a Feather today at 3 p.m. And there's a video blog post if you want to get more information about it. Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Any questions right now?
Okay, let's get moving. Hi, I'm Regis. Let me just ask you one question. Where do you host your videos? I'll answer that for you. Perhaps you store them on YouTube, perhaps you store them on Vimeo or elsewhere. I don't know. Well, I am here today to tell you one thing. Get your videos back and host them yourself. Really, it's not that hard. And then you're gonna ask me, but why would I want to do that? YouTube works really well. Well, I have just one single reason to give you. It's a pretty big reason. Listen carefully. Video is a core component of online education. You absolutely must get it right. Without video, you don't have online education. And if you get to the trouble of hosting your own MOOC platform yourself, why not host your videos? Really, it's not that hard. So really, you cannot compromise on video. What cannot you compromise on? Basic features. You can't compromise on multiple resolutions. You can't compromise on adjustable play speed, clickable video transcripts. But more importantly, you cannot compromise on downloadable files for offline viewing. This is crucial to the learner experience so that they can view videos offline. And this is not possible on YouTube, as you know. You can't compromise on 100% accessibility. What does that mean? That means accessible all the time and for everyone, not just 80% of the world. I'm looking at you, China and YouTube and Dailymotion, and here I picked on China, but it's also true for many countries. Okay, so at that point you might be thinking, this is going to be hard. I mean, hosting my own videos, I don't know how to do that. Well, I would like to tell you one thing. It's gonna be fine. Get rid of YouTube, really. All you have to do is 3 simple things. Very easy. First, install VideoFront. This is a new project that it's a Django project, small, about 3,000 lines of code, that provides an API and where you can upload your videos. It's great, it's great. Then you have to plug to it with a custom X block called the VideoFront X block, which is also open source. It's based on Video.js. And the third thing that you must do is send me your credit card number. No, so yeah, everything is free, but it's actually it's actually no, but yeah, seriously. So VideoFront, how much does it cost? So it's a pretty important question. In order to understand what it costs, you have to understand what is video hosting. Video hosting is 3 things. First, it's storage on disk. Then it's transcoding to multiple resolutions that is CPU bound. And then you have streaming, which is delivering the videos to the users. This is related to bandwidth. The cost of the first 2 items is a function of the number of videos. The cost of the third item is proportional to the number of users that you have. Okay, so how much is this going to cost you? Well, if you make a graph with a number of videos and users, okay, so maybe you have a personal blog, it's here. You have few users, you have few videos. On the other hand is YouTube. YouTube has many users, many videos, very expensive, you don't want to beat them. And then at the bottom right, many videos, very few users, MySpace, I don't know. But you are there at the top left corner. You have few videos because you're a MOOC platform, but you have many users. So the cost is not going, it's not going to be that much. Let's break this down into numbers. Let's say you have a course with 20 videos, 10 minutes videos. You have 1,000 users that view all the videos every month. This is an assumption. And then how much is this going to cost? So you can use two different backends, let's say. You can store everything on your own servers. This is what I call the local backend. So I made the math. It costs about 10 euros per month. So you will have all the slides on GitHub afterwards. So the 10 euros, this is per month per 1,000 users. I call that the gold plan. And then you could use a backend on AWS with all the nice services that they provide. This is what I call the platinum backend. It's more expensive. This is, again, a price per 1,000 users per month per course. And the great thing is that Videofront supports both of these backends. Actually, Videofront was developed so that you can create your own custom backend. So you can have a custom backend with the best of both worlds, and then you have a pricing that is dependent on what you pick. I call that the double rainbow plan. Okay, but at that point you might be thinking, no, but hey, so seriously, a bandwidth. I'm a video provider. A bandwidth is going to be very expensive. Well, good news for you. But perhaps, yeah. Sorry about that. The required average bandwidth is 5.3 megabit per second, but today a server comes for free with 250 megabit per second. So this is great news. Will it scale? Seriously? Videofront has been in production on FunMOOC. I don't know if you heard about FunMOOC. It has 1 million users, 300 courses. Videofront has been running for 8 months and it's been running great. That's all I got. Thank you very much. Migrate your videos today. Get in touch. I'm Regis.
Okay, Regis, help him out figure it out. So Regis mentioned it, but all of these slides, everything's being videoed, and all the slides are going to be made available afterwards, so you don't have to try and capture these things as Regis flies by them on the screen. What are we looking for?
Mine is this one.
Okay.
And I have two
Okay.
little videos.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you very much. I'm going to do this lightning talk in Spanish. No, just kidding. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the video. I'm not a developer. I'm the founder of IBL Studios, which is a course production company in New York. We also do OpenEdX deployment. And I'm going to talk how to film at a scale by using the latest technologies. So last year we got this engagement. We needed to produce 2 courses per month in all these subjects, introductory level courses, 30 hours, 40 hours courses. And the requirement was very clear. You need to produce all these courses. I need at least 6 to 8 hours of video. You need to hire 25 and plus professors from top schools. So I say, okay, how can we do this efficiently and in a manner way? So we say, well, the very first thing, the real answer is no post-production. How many videographers in the room? Okay, you know the pain of post-production. Post-production takes time and time and time. So you say, okay, let's get rid of post-production forever. Let's produce everything in real time. Not streaming, but in real time. So mixing cameras, many cameras, laptops, iPads, everything in real time. The second point was key. We needed to have always top instructors. That means paying them well, and obviously we needed to use all the very latest technologies available in the world. So we install a white cyclorama. You know an idea of what is a cyclorama? Well, it's a huge infinite background. I will show some pictures here. We needed to use a light board. Light board is like writing in the glass. That's a nice piece of technology, especially well for STEM courses. And in terms of a green screen, we wanted to use CNN style, the latest technology, meaning avoiding that kind of a green glow that you see when you do green screen. So obviously a 4K, even if it's YouTube, you need to do 4K because the quality is much more better. iPad, I know that there are other technologies, but we say, okay, iPad works very well. Was the best for the kind of instructional design, and obviously audio is key. This is the cyclorama that I'm talking. It allows any professor to not only being stuck in a podium, but walk around the whole room, because at the end, the way that you do teaching is this way. So this is the light board. By the way, anyone can install a light board. It's open source. It's an open source technology, but you're going to need to have a lot of equipment and especially dedicated studio for the light board, because as you see, you need a black background. This is the control room, and from this control room, we are using all the studios. That was the white cyclorama, and the other one is the other studio with the light board. So you need to have a very well coordinated team. People say team. Yeah, always best professors, instructional designers, videographers, and engineers, because at the end, it's not only creating the courses, you need to create an interactive experience. So this is a shot of a studio. That's a biology course, and that's the view of the professor. The professor is using the iPad, but at the same time, you know, they're following the notes. You need to create a situation in where all they feel extremely comfortable. This is one of the theme of the courses, and I wanna show a couple of videos produced in real time. You say, oh, real time is low quality, it's a guy with a little camera. So it requires, well, we put that, it requires a lot of pre-production. You don't have post-production, but you need a lot of pre-production. So maybe this one is the first one, or that is the second one. Well, yeah, that's fine. So this is the intro to a pre-calculus course. Oh, we need the sound. So we have the professor talking in real time, and obviously with pre-recorded video, we are adding all these images. You may say, no way, this is post-production. You're kidding me. Believe me, this is all real-time production. So when you are producing at a scale, massively, you need to produce in real time. Exactly the same way that the television business works. If you go American Got Talent or any other program, it works this way. So let's use, if you want to do courses at a massive scale, delivering a couple of courses per month, you're going to need to do live productions. And that's all.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Do you have a question for any of our first three speakers while we're finding the next?
Oh, this video is still playing back here too.
So how do I like move forward?
Push that one. Any questions for some of the speakers? And can anyone tell me how to work this thing?
I have a question for the first group about Raccoon Gang and is that video X block? How do you get the X block? Is it just install it in Studio from the GitHub?
Stop that. Where's your?
So it's a separate player than the actual out of the box player.
Yeah, so you go to the advanced tab. It's not choose video. You need the micro slides because of the video. Yeah. And also, could you repeat the question?
Sure. The question was if you want to try out the video XBlock on your own OpenEdX instance, how would you do that? So you would download the video XBlock from GitHub, you install it in your local edX instance, and then for the course where you want to use a video XBlock, you would add it to the advanced modules. And then it will show up under the advanced, the little beaker icon. You'll see a new thing there called video.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Cross, and this is,
Sagoto.
we're from Tokyo Institute of Technology, and we'd like to tell you about Tokyo TechX's TA training program utilizing online resources. So I know this is a video session. One of the challenges with the video is how do you train people to make videos using online resources, so we'd like to talk about that. First, I'd like to introduce Tokyo TechX. We joined edX in October 2014. We've created 3 MOOCs. Our average MOOC development duration has been about 18 months for various reasons. We have a number of faculty, staff, and we work with about 25 TAs. Here's our MOOC production model. In this case, we have staff and faculty and a course instructor, and the TAs do most of the work.
So on our 4th MOOC, which was on science and engineering ethics, we wanted to we developed TA training in order for us to speed up our MOOC making process. So this is a question like we wanted to answer throughout the MOOC making. How do we train TAs effectively to develop a MOOC? So In order for us to answer this question, we divided the TA training topics into two, which was content creation and video production. So those two are the teaching methods that we use, online resources and then hands-on workshop.
So you can see our video studio here, or you could. There's the professor and a TA recording in the studio, and you can see our control room, and there's the TAs there. So with online content creation, we use online resources to train the TAs. And then we created several SPOCs to teach students, and then some of those TAs became TAs. So we use SPOCs, and we taught the students how to create learning objectives, content assessments, and we taught them how to use edX Studio. We took materials from various sources, and we had an agreement with Stanford's, and we used their creating effective online and blended courses, and we also translated that into Japanese. So as far as the hands-on workshop, what we did was we we invited a speaker to give a workshop. In this case, the title of the workshop was From Ideation to Innovation, How to Create an Effective Online or an Online Course. And this was taught by Stanford's Dr. Grace Liu. She's the Director of Digital Teaching and Learning at Stanford. So you can see several photos shown here on the right. This is during the workshop. We had some of the TAs working on creating the online course, and on the bottom, the TAs were actually presenting their ideas. In addition to Tokyo Tech, Kyoto University and Osaka University also participated in our workshop. As far as video production, when we got started with this several years ago, there wasn't a lot of online materials, so we used what was available. We had the students actually create marketing and educational short videos. We looked at the instruction was from pre to post-production, and there's the SPOC over there. And we use these materials, and then we supplement that with guest lectures. As far as the hands-on workshop, in this case, we had the learning objectives were for the groups to actually create short videos and work with experts to acquire the video specialist skills. So the hands-on workshop consisted of 3 days, and we had a group from Hollywood come, and we had 25 participants, and then we gave the group that prepared the best video an award.
So we created our ethics MOOC in about 7 months, and then we believe this was partially due to the TA training that we implemented through this MOOC, and then through also through this TA training, we have learned that customizing online resources is really important, and then also having a group of TAs to complete the online training allows the MOOC team to share common language, and then also the lastly, practicum opportunity in case of ours was hands-on workshop, boosted the TA's competency and also the motivation. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Any questions from the audience? Nail it. Ready to go? All right.
Hi there, I'm from Russia, and I want to share some experience about scaling proctoring. You need the microphone. Oh, okay. So, hello one more time. I am from Russia, and I don't know what I'm doing in the video section, but I want to share with you some experience about scaling proctoring exams. Some background. We are speaking about national platform of open education in Russia. There are top 9 universities, huge amount of students and courses, and right now this is the only one platform that can give you credits for your courses if they are passed in the proctored mode. So we do need proctoring, and this year we have the aim to scale proctoring students for 10th time than the last year. And there are some problems and solutions that we have found on this path. First, the students are often late for their proctoring exams, and they are trying to make to another time, and so on and so forth. So we have to create our own scheduled mechanisms, use it over multi-proctoring solution that has been developed with our friends from Rakuten also, and give the students ability to change the time even before an exam. And it worked, and it helped us really to scale the number of exams which is going in one time. The second problem is that we have very different courses from art, from mathematics, from physics, and from the different universities you have different rules for the exams. On one exam you can use a calculator or a piece of paper, or on another exam you should know everything from heart. So we need to add some additional info and parameters for each exam and each type of exam for proctors to understand what learner could do or what he couldn't do during the exam. From some universities, proctors, professors don't trust proctors. They want to be proctors by themselves on some exam, so we have to give them ability to be as a proctor or proctored exam, or revise the proctoring exams by the representatives of the university. In this configuration, we have educational platform and its support. We have proctoring and its support, and we have university and its support. There are 3 groups of people, and after a half of a year of hard processes, we understand that we have to create some special requirements of how they should interact. We have created them, and the life became much more easier. And of course, cost efficiency push us to create the mechanism to lowering the price of the proctoring, because right now only real-time proctoring is affordable if you want to get credits. Not offline proctoring or synchronous, only online. So that is why our colleagues trying to create some different solutions for cyber proctoring and so on and so forth. And at least we managed. We have multiplied the number of students this year for 10th time than the last year. So that all that I want to share. Thank you very much. If you have a question about scaling proctoring, ask us or our friends from Rakuten. Thank you.
While we're switching laptops, any questions for any of the speakers so far? None? No? Okay. Everyone has nailed their presentation. There's no open loose ends to fill in. We're getting there. We're getting there.
There we go. Good afternoon. I'm Vicente Goyanes. I'm the CEO of Teltec Video Research. We are a company focused on edtech solutions, especially on open solutions for online video to support teaching and learning. We have customers worldwide, and today I would like to talk about well, this is the usual workflow. You have to produce videos. Usually you upload videos to YouTube, and then you publish videos on open edX. This could be exhausting and unsecure many times. And what if we can provide our professors a way to manage their videos and even to produce their videos inside open edX? Well, our proposal is something like this. These are the outcome of 3 open projects together, working together. One for the recording, the second one for the enrichment, and the third one for media management. Talking about the recording, the solution is Gallicaster. It's called Gallicaster. This solution, what does is to record two or more synchronous streams, typically a separate video from professor and a separate video from the screen. This is just software with a regular PC that you can place elsewhere. Somewhere you have the 2 screen recorded. It generates a touch interface, so professor in the classroom very easily can trigger the recording and manage it. You can have in your classroom something like this. You can also integrate it on video conference rooms, in theaters. You can also build recording studios based on this. There are many institutions worldwide using this open solution. but I will also present a version of this embedded on OpenEdX. To enrich, this is based on OpenCast, a project at the time led by UC Berkeley. It creates this user experience, it indexes the videos, it extracts text from the slides, but it can also recognize, for instance, QR codes on the slides. For instance, this slide will be removed because it indicates that it's copyrighted material. This one can sign a chapter mark, so the video can be then cut automatically. To publish, we are using Pumukit. Pumukit is a YouTube-like thing, but also interacts with Moodle, OpenEdX, and so on. Many institutions are using this solution. For instance, UNED, this University of Cologne in Germany, others in UK, the United Nations. This is all open source. To create this magic, you have to install a Pumukit bundle and an OpenEdX XBlock. This will be you will also be able to embed YouTube videos, of course. And if you want to learn more, there are the URLs. And now I'll try to showcase you this user experience of the integration. So here we are in a studio, new green button here, videos coming from Pumukit. Here, just clicking it, this is the default video. It's an XBlock that is able to, videos you can, you can manage the video, but of course this is the default one. You can edit the video. Here you can add the URL if you have it. You can also upload your videos right from here. Professor can manage his library, but he can also record here his own video. Just have to activate camera, activate the screen sharing. For instance, this application, I will give it just, I will trigger recording. Now it's recording. Hello, here I am. This is enough. Just I stop recording. It uploads the thing. Okay. And now I save. And if everything's well, here I have published it on my unit, the new dual stream video. And there it is. 5 minutes, it's got crazy. Thank you, that's it.
Very nice. Not only a 5-minute lightning talk, but a live demo in a 5-minute lightning talk. Okay. Thank you all for coming. We are out of time. I hope this was helpful. We have birds of a feather sessions later on this afternoon, and this might be a good time to find these people and ask them more questions about what they've built. Thanks for coming.
So thanks everyone for coming. I'm really here to ask for your help in finding ways that we can partner better together. So, you know, I think the edX.org and OpenEdX really don't have that much connection. You know, I asked the other day, how many people do you know, and this is at edX, do you know who have OpenEdX sites? And they said, oh, well, there are a lot of them. And I said, well, do you know the people there? Well, no, yeah, I don't know. They're just out there. And so what I'm trying to do is figure out ways that collaboratively we could work together to increase access to high quality education, which I think is what, you know, everybody wants to do. And I was really struck by Anand's keynote, where he was saying that together between OpenEdX and edX, there are 22 million learners. And these are 22 million people across the globe who want to learn online. And you know, it's pretty incredible that we have that many people, but maybe there are some ways that synergistically we could help each other. So edX is a nonprofit with high quality content and platform and open source. And you know, a lot of people have come up to people at edX at this conference and said, can you help us? Can you give us advice? Can you work with us? And you know, we have questions, and this conference is a great example of how many people are interested in OpenEdX. But we don't get any money from OpenEdX, right? So we put the platform out there, and you know, we want to support it as much as possible, and we want the community to support it. But we need ways to be sustainable as a nonprofit, and we need everybody in the community to be sustainable. So how do we get that, you know, cycle going? So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about some ideas I had, and then I really would like to use this session for ideas you have, to gather those ideas, and they can be crazy, they can whatever. I'm just trying to spark a discussion here about ways that we could collaborate together. So the idea, one idea I had for solely the edX.org perspective and helping edX.org be sustainable and collaborate. So I'm going to go through my ideas and then ask you for yours. So edX.org has lots of courses and programs in lots of different areas, right? So data science, cybersecurity, we have hard skills, soft skills, from a variety of universities and institutions. And these are well known. We have many more of them, but these are courses that you could potentially offer on your platforms, not being competitive, but something that your learners might be interested in. So the idea, you get a value add for your community. So not asking you to compete with what you're doing, but you could offer select courses, all courses to your community. It's new and different information, and for some of you it's in a different language, so it's even less competitive. So they're already online learning. Here's another resource for them in the community. We are going to create a partners page on edX.org where we would feature OpenEdX partners who are part of this collaborative endeavor, and so that is going to help us. And we would also be willing to share some revenue back on people who buy verified certificates on edX. So basically, one of the ways edX makes money is by offering verified certificates, as many of you do. And so for linking to edX from your site, if people came and got a verified certificate, would consider potentially sharing some revenue from those verified certificates back to you, so that helps you as well. I've talked to some people. Maybe you could, send an email telling them about the edX courses. We have an API that you could use to, bring courses in. It can be a curated API, so you could select only the ones you want, or only the subject matter or the school. Would love a link in your website footer, linking. Homepage placement. The idea being it's not competitive, it's something different, but it helps support the overall initiative. And this is what we mocked up. This is, I don't know whether you've seen it, but we have a similar page for our universities on the edX site. So we would do the same thing for anyone who worked with us on this, and we would put your logo and then a link back to your site. So those were our ideas. Now, I'd love if people had comments on those or other ideas. I don't know. I see some people taking notes, some people nodding, some people looking a little confused. Any thoughts from anyone on these ideas or your own ideas? How many people? Yeah, in the back.
What about a paid certification on the OpenEdX platform?
You're asking what about a paid?
Certification on the OpenEdX platform. So, for example, let's say you wanted to become an OpenEdX partner, you would then be required to, and say that you're an official OpenEdX partner, pay for some sort of certification of those airports on the platform, like a technical certification.
That you're a. I'm not an official open source person. So what other people think about that idea? I think it's a good idea. Who would certify? edX would certify you.
Anybody who wanted to be
Yeah.
hosting provider, services provider, etc.
Any thoughts on that idea? So if you were offering services, you would get an official certificate from edX? Is that what you're suggesting?
So yeah, you could apply for, you could basically take a course and get some sort of.
Oh. Are you saying take a course? Here, you can, if you want to say something, you can. Oh.
So you're talking about like a service providers, like, I know, I'm sorry about the mic. Is this off? It sounds like you're
There you
talking
go.
about a sort of a verified partner for doing service providers for OpenEdX. Is that right?
Yeah, it could be for providing hosting services, for providing implementation services, etc.
Yeah, so we're definitely looking into the idea of beefing up the service provider ecosystem around OpenEdX. Right now we have a lot of providers. We have a wiki page where they list themselves as saying we do services for OpenEdX. It's very informal. We don't limit who can put themselves there. There are 45 different firms that have themselves on that page. And we are thinking about ways of beefing that up, saying that these people are certified or verified or official resellers or whatever that might be. That's a very different connection between edX.org and the OpenEdX world than what Sasha's talking about, which is sort of sharing the learner world together, right? How can edX.org learners know more about OpenEdX, and how can OpenEdX learners know more about edX.org? So there's lots of different connections between the two worlds, and doing more with the service providers is definitely one of the things we're interested in.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Ned. This is more a question for them than for you.
Okay.
It's more for the open source and because I didn't know exactly this conference how was about.
Yeah.
As you know, we are both on edX and OpenEdX, so we are already integrated and trying to put synergies on both. What we do is we have modified OpenEdX, so we have a type of course that is a link to edX. So we announce our URLs, and then when they click on it, they go to edX and things like that. But I think that what I was going to ask is for someone that I think that you already had during several months, someone in the OpenX group that is devoted to kind of technical community manager or something like that, devoted to following what we are doing in the open community, because for us now OpenEDX is open source, but it's not an open community. You have a couple or three contributors that they get their pull requests through it. You have a lot of others that we have decided not to make pull requests because it was too time consuming. And I think that, for example, now you have developed a new X block for video, and you haven't asked anyone or seen if, for example, we in this case, we have an open source video player that is being used in Harvard, in Zurich. And I don't say that you should be using that, but you could get ideas or something. I think that if you had someone especially devoted in the OpenEDX team, in the OpenEDX team to communicating with OpenEDX partners, at the end perhaps it could be a cost for you, but in a couple of months or 3, you could be aligning everybody.
Yeah, this isn't quite what this session is about, but
yeah. Well, I'll address this very briefly. So I don't want to take over Sasha's session. But so Ignacio was asking about easing the contribution process and making not only the source open, but making the community more open. And believe me, I feel bad every time someone feels like the community isn't as open as it could be, because we want contributions, but we do have an essential asymmetry in the community between the engineering velocity and capacity of the edX organization and the people who are trying to contribute, and that is something that we deal with constantly on the Open edX team. Like I mentioned before, we're looking into how to do more of a service provider, beefed up service provider. We're also thinking about ways that we can do more to educate people about Open edX, sort of a marketing function for Open edX, which really brings Sasha and me closer together. How to ease the contribution process is a huge topic that we really should talk about maybe at the Birds of a Feather. And George in the back of the room was running one yesterday. I don't know if you're running one today about easing the contribution process. But definitely we want to, I feel terrible that you feel bad about it. Okay, that's the main message I want you to hear. And I wish that you didn't feel bad about it, and I want to fix it. Okay, sure.
Yeah, Sasha, I really think edX could help a lot. Okay, right there. Okay. I think edX, Open edX needs edX's help in pushing the platform, because in my recent communications, University of California has selected an alternate supplier. Why? I have a feeling that nobody from Open edX was there to push the platform. So all California universities have selected a different platform. University of Texas, the whole University of Texas systems has selected a different platform. And I think a lot of it is when you're going in and pushing edX, and they say, well, that's pretty expensive for the whole university system. I don't know if you're doing the plug for edX, Open edX.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that in all the discussions that we have, Open edX is a big discussion point in terms of one of the things we say is even if you go with edX, you can always go with Open edX as well. Some places do both. So it isn't like we're just saying go with edX. Open edX is part of the...
Right, but was someone there when the University of California was making a choice and saying we need to pick a vendor? Were we there? Because that's scary, because the country of California and the country of Texas are now basically off limits, and I'm just curious whose job that is to make sure that that platform war doesn't get lost.
Go ahead.
Which vendor do they choose? It wasn't an open source solution.
Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're not going out across the world specifically or into states and promoting Open edX as a platform as a business, because it is not a business, right? It's open source, anyone can use it. When we talk to people, we talk about it, but we don't have a specific initiative to go out and promote it as a solution uniquely. Is that?
Yeah, but we need to win the platform war, and if we don't go visit and we don't make that call, we lose.
Right. So Randy just said that if we don't go and make the visit, we're going to lose the platform war if we don't have someone about Open edX in those kinds of meetings.
So I get your concern. My thought on what you're saying is that edX.org is owned by the entity known as edX. Open edX, the software platform, is really owned by all of us. So it seems like your premise is that it is necessarily the edX organization's responsibility.
It's somebody's responsibility. So the question
Yeah.
is,
But it could be yours, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
going to be able to walk in the state of California like either Open edX.
So yeah, maybe to come back. So maybe your suggestion on helping us all work together is to take a more proactive view on Open edX as a platform. True, maybe that is a good thing, but we come back to the sustainability issue, right? And how does that help edX be sustainable? How does it help overall learners?
If you lose the platform war, your sustainability dies.
I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point, and edX as an organization has never devoted energy towards specifically marketing Open edX, right? It's a topic that comes up when we go and talk to people about edX.org, but you're absolutely right. That is something that we do not do, and I totally understand that when you're sitting with a CIO and they want to think about edX as a thing, they don't want to hear from a service provider about edX. They want to hear from edX, and we just don't do that. And we need to think about how we approach that in a way that is not just a cost to us, but all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. It's a big organization. They're used to dealing a certain way. They don't want to hear about open source. They want to hear about someone who's going to support them. I understand.
Sasha, so is it possible that we can separately license edX course, right? Not by entire course or program, but by individual knowledge point. You know, so let's say if you break your course, right, and into a very self-contained unit, you know, so that that unit is going to teach one concept. Yeah.
So break up
yeah.
courses into modules
yes,
that you could
into
license.
module, and also package it so that we can separate, export it, right, as a module. And then the enterprise, the corporation can license that module and to put together with our own course, and then we can pay the license to edX.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's an interesting idea. I mean, obviously the universities would have to participate in that modularization, right? So.
It could work the other way as well.
What?
So we could build. So technically, also organization like ours can build different models and bring it back to that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we can devote a full course for edX, right, as applied materials, but we can probably take some pieces and give it away.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think for the corporation, for the corporation, there always no time to let employee to learn a course from beginning to end. Right? So they also always do it in the other way. They first has a problem, right? Then they figure out which course can answer that question, that problem, and then we put the course together in that way. So, you know, if you can license the course in some way, in that way, by the university,
no, that was
there will be interest there. Yeah. So.
I suppose the thing I wanted to say is that I firmly believe that the fact that there is this Open edX community providing a lot of different services using the platform, services that don't compete with edX in any way, but they add to the value proposition of edX. I really think it would be of benefit for edX when it's talking to university partners or potential university partners to push the fact that there are a suite of services beyond what edX offer, using the same platform from a competitive environment of service providers. That's a real value add, whereas your competition may be competing directly with you, but they might also have other services that they're selling which compete against the open edX community. And if you separate yourself off and say, no, we only make money out of open edX, and don't push the ecosystem as well, then you're in a much less competitive place.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we do promote open edX as part of the value of edX, that we are open source and that you can do kind of your own thing, as well as taking, when we're pitching edX, we're also pitching the open source and the open edX platform. But did you have any, I mean, I know you come from a different perspective, but do you have any ideas on how, there might be a way to, cross-pollinate the learners? That's really what I'm aiming for, more than service providers.
I'm very interested in the way UPV have implemented an on-campus open edX that integrates with their edX.org courses to provide a kind of unified experience for students that are interacting with UPV and their MOOCs. And I'm sure that there will be other solutions that do that kind of expand what a university who's an edX.org partner can do in their learning products and offerings by integrating in things that the open edX community offer as well.
Thank you.
So what kinds of things are people doing to engage their learners, and what is the sort of stuff that's on edX.org that could be part of that, or vice versa? Any unusual marketing techniques to draw people in?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to push the discussion back to the technical side, but thinking about ways of bringing traffic and users and enrollments from the open edX platforms to edX.org, two ideas come to mind. One would be not necessarily good ideas, just want to throw them out. One would be using edX.org as a third-party auth for open edX sites, so that it's also a way for users to have a credential on edX.org to log into their open edX site. And the other one would be to handle the enrollment in the edX courses that we consume from your course catalog service discovery thing. Process that enrollment in the open edX site, and then report the enrollment back to edX.org, probably in a way that you could probably have those people enrolled in a particular cohort. I'm aligning with what you said about the corporations. Probably there'll be a way for corporations to bring in people to the edX.org courses, but then give them some particular differentiated treatment based on a cohort, for instance, instead of having to modularize all the content.
Yeah. And do you think, is that something that you would think is a good idea for your organization, or are you just throwing it out as a...
I don't represent an organization that has a large number of users, but I definitely think it would be a good idea for both sides of the equation.
I could add a small thing in terms of what we're doing in Oslo and Norway, and that is looking at the MOOCs as a kind of textbook and partnering both internally and externally with traditional providers of textbooks like publishing houses as one thing. And I think it would be good not to talk so much about the platform, but of the artifact that students are encountering. So it's a different kind of perspective. So we are not competing with other platforms, but we are competing with traditional textbooks and the traditional modes of using textbooks. That's one thing. The other is we are experiencing the change to Office 365 now. And talking about learning organizations, what you can see from Office 365, it's going to be a learning platform. And then Microsoft purchased LinkedIn and building LinkedIn Learning. So we look in the future, are we going to compete or collaborate with Microsoft on these things? So the university is not only it's not only the students that are learning, but it's the entire organization. And these kind of conceptual things are something we would look for support from the edX and the Open edX community.
Could you explain just a little bit what you're doing on the textbook side?
Well,
quite clear
first of all, we are redesigning the way we do teaching and learning. So textbooks would sort of fork into the online part, which is, you know, with videos and flashy stuff and interactivity, and then we go for deep, slow reading. So books should be no pictures, small font, big space for annotation, and heavy reading. So we sort of split the book into the online part and the paper part, and then redesigning how we, in blended mode, redesigning what we do together with students, which is out there in blended, in flipped classroom things. But to do that institution-wide. And so in that, what we encounter is the discussion with traditional LMS providers that are organizing classes very much in the traditional mode, while we come from the other side, from the library side, from the publishing side, and that's the competition at the moment. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Competition are books, but competition are also search engines. When you want to learn something, you go on Google.
Right.
And also to address the point that my neighbor just mentioned before, in our group of universities, we indexed all the micro modules that we have developed, so that when students want to look at a specific topic, they can directly access the module or which is included in a bigger course where the topic is used.
So surfacing more of the individual items in a course.
Yeah, and this I mean with the license, this way you could use the same content and maybe you develop it with certain rights for the usage in your organization or on the platform for people who register for it, and then there would be another license for people who want to access it from the outside.
Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm from MIT. Just relating to that, I think something we've been thinking a lot about is making it easier for people to build the skill set that they need to be successful in a course. You know, for example, like we have an introductory calculus course. A lot of our more advanced courses need calculus to do them, but it's really hard. Actually, we've found it's very challenging just on the edX.org site for someone to figure out what prereqs they need and then actually get directed to that resource. So I wonder if that's something that could be thought about pathways to learning, because I think that could be really valuable for, there's a lot of that type of content on edX.org that could be a good resource for people on Open edX courses to go back and forth to get foundational skills in one place and then go take, you know, whatever sort of more advanced specific thing that a lot of, you know, that edX.org partners like us are offering, but also a lot of Open edX people are. So I know we're looking at that and trying to piece through some of our courses and figure that out, but how that would be implemented, you know, on the platform, I think we are hoping to talk about more in the future, but I think that could be an opening for some portability.
Well, I guess before, just a question. I brought up the idea of using edX courses on Open edX sites. Is there an interest in that? If those of you who have sites, could you raise your hand if you're at all interested in that? Okay, so good. That's good. Is it, and in what capacity would you see doing that?
Are you going to answer that? No, the thing is that building on this you are telling, why don't use MOOC.org to build kind of a list of courses that can be on edX and open edX sites to make kind of a specialization or whatever, that you don't have all the courses on edX or things like that. So you have MOOC.org that you still are looking for what to do with it. So you could kind of make something intermediate where people can go and look for, and someone can curate and say, let's do, if you take this from fun or from whatever open edX.
Right, which kind of puts both of your ideas together. That's really interesting. We've thought about that. We just, you know, do you think it's, raise your hands if you think that's a good idea. So the idea of using another site to pull that thing together, yeah? Did you have
Sasha, just in our instance, you know, we have courses that are on Zhuitang. We have collaborated with a number of other edX partners, both institutional and organizational, on course development, and some of those partners have their own open edX instances. So we might have reasons to want to direct students to those catalogs, or to present those catalogs in some organized way where we have some control of how those catalogs are presented. So the sort of functionality you're talking about, I can see that, you know, there's going to be more and more uses as, you know, we're a large organization. There's lots of partners for all sorts of different things. We have, you know, groups at UQ doing training courses for international development, for governments around the world, things like that. And they're not only wanting courses, they're wanting platforms to run run those courses on. It makes sense to me that if we have a platform and service providers where we can say, well, we can develop using our expertise your courseware, and you have this selection of service providers that can set you up and host it and brand it for you, and then we can link it back to our course catalog and say, or they can link back to our course catalog, so their users do the courses that we provided, and then find the rest of our catalog, and then go on to edX and find a more diverse catalog. You know, it's just a connected learning environment that's you know, spans the globe and lots of different organizations.
As far as I understand, there's a certain barrier to entry to publish more courses on edX. Maybe there could be things like proposing sort of a contest and then admitting some courses from other contributors.
So that there would be a way to get on the edX platforms for select courses from select groups.
Yes.
Excuse me?
Educator idol.
Yeah. That's a good idea. How many here would be interested in that?
Oh,
yeah.
We can't afford your
So that idea would be linking to those courses from edX.org, or putting the course on edX.org, or it doesn't make a difference, or I keep getting distracted, so I missed some details.
No, I think the idea would be a contest to have it on edX.org. Is that what I think?
Very cool.
It could maybe bring diversity and quality or new ideas.
I mean, is there an advantage to linking for edX, linking to open edX sites?
Last answers.
So the key advantage for edX linking to open edX sites is the fact that edX.org has a very specific set of X blocks and other features available. So if your courseware is taking advantage of X blocks that are not available on edX.org, then they would not work if they were uploaded to edX.org.
There will be some technical limitations if you're using exotic features. So I think We're out of time, unfortunately. There is an open Birds of a Feather session starting at 3 o'clock. Sasha will be down there in the snack area, of course, replenishing herself. So you can catch her then if you have some more ideas. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Hello? Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our session. We kind of just want to present to you like how we're approaching blended learning at MIT for our residential courses. And so we've got Peter Pinch, Seyfrian, and myself. And I'll start by just giving you a quick overview of what I do. So I'm on the educational technology team at MITx. And so we've got some resources that support all of these courses that are being run on campus for MIT students using Open edX. And so I'd like to really just call out this number, between 30 and 50 on-campus courses every semester. And so we have one full-time employee that kind of supports all of this in terms of like the actual like course author support. And so the reason that's important is because of these like 4 highlighted sorts of things that we do. And so so course provisioning is a big one. When we have 30 to 40 courses every semester running, we also have maybe like 10 more that we just provision just because, experiments that really don't end up learner-facing. And so course provisioning is a really, really big task. And so on campus, or on my team, we generally try to get that to be as short as possible of a process. So we have a few scripts that help do that. And so we have one that will actually set up the courses, and then we have another one that will actually put in some dummy content so that course authors who've never built a course before can actually kind of get started with a little bit of content. And so this is just a look at like our dashboard. We've got courses that span a whole lot of different topics. And this is a graphic I just wanted to show you. It's kind of an internal rendition of why it's so difficult for us to provision a course. So everything from a professor asking for a course to when it actually gets updated. So we really wanted to streamline that. And so to do that, we have those scripts. And also, we have a couple of different workflows that we support at the same time. And so I feel like probably the room is familiar with the studio workflow in edX. We have a slightly modified version to support our blended learning efforts a little better. We're actually in the middle of revising this right now, but that's a general overview. And then we also support XML authoring directly. And so that's editing the courses directly in the XML. And this is a quick diagram of how we support that. And so we use GitHub to manage the content. And anyway, that's just a quick overview of how we support those two things. And then we also don't upgrade every single time there's a named release. So in order to support the faculty's experiments, we try to keep consistent platforms during the semester so that they don't get interrupted by unexpected things that could come out during a release. So during the QA upgrade, we actually will test some of the features that we have put specifically on our instance of Open edX, but we also try to test the content and make sure that the courses that are currently running aren't nothing's going wrong with those. Another really big thing that we do is not only do we have instructors who are experimenting on campus with blended learning, we also have the same instructors often experimenting with MOOCs on edX.org. And so my team facilitates the content transfer between those two environments, which actually can be very tricky. This kind of goes back to the talk we just had. And so things like where the video originated can actually be kind of a problem that we have to manage with my team, and also any sort of changes in the features that are available with the named release we're currently working with and edX.org, and also just changes to the XML. As you saw before, we have course teams that are editing directly in the XML, so our source technically lives outside of the platform. So we need to stay up to date on the XML changes so that we're importing course content in whatever way we're importing it that's sound and won't break. So content transfer. And so we have a few other things. I don't want to just talk about all of the random things that we have, but if you have any other questions afterward, you can let us know. But Safe actually will go into a little detail about how he uses LaTeX to edX in the physics courses. So anyway, without further ado, Safe has some very specific examples of how we do this with physics courses.
Thank you, Shai. Can you hear me? No. Now? What about now? Okay, great. Hi, my name is Saif Rayan. I want to start by showing you this. The date was November 4th, 2011. There was a closed-door meeting where Anant Agarwal invited a bunch of MIT faculty. They were leaders. At that time, they're really leaders in online and blended learning, experts in educational technology, innovation, and pedagogy and teaching with computers, and education research. And his goal was, can we bring in all this innovation and all these great things that are done at MIT and make them really into a platform that enables delivering MOOCs. And what you see is the first brainstorming session. So I think this is the very first blueprint of what later became the Open edX platform. A week later, Anant hired Piotr Mitros, and 3 months later, they really came up with a new platform and offered 602X. This is my first Open edX conference, so I get to show this at least once. I've been since working on creating MOOCs and using the platform in blended learning. I'm very old school. I use GitHub to author content. I have a virtual machine running on my computer that have been customized by MITx Engineering. I use LaTeX to edX, which is open source. It's a tool that enables you to write courses in LaTeX. We use it to write a lot of problems. We do physics, and physics has a lot of equations, and it's very convenient for us to use LaTeX to author problems. This is the punch card. All my team uses the same workflow. So we use GitHub to collaborate on content. And this is basically, the circles represent the number of commits at different times of day and hour. And you can see that the only time that we really sleep is Sunday morning from 2 a.m. until 7 a.m. We've worked on creating content. We create a lot of content, and most of it is really assessment. We have hundreds of problems in each one of our courses. Now I come to introducing myself. I'm a digital learning scientist. It's something that's special to MIT because we predated Studio, we predated Open edX, we predated edX. I am a person that has the discipline knowledge, education, some background in education research. I did a postdoc in physics education research. I'm fluent in education technology and have a good understanding of the MIT culture. And the result that departments that have a person like me have been very active in driving innovations in digital learning, especially with blended learning on campus. The first instance that Peter Pinch here set up of edX was in fall 2012. That's 2 years before Open edX was announced, a year, maybe a year and a half. So we've been using the platform to do blended learning sense. If you ask an MIT professors, why do you get involved in MOOCs? The first answer that they will tell you is that because I want to improve the MIT students' learning and their experience. It's not reaching out to the world. Reaching out to the world is number two. And that kind of makes sense because if we do not understand how to use digital tools to teach our students, how are we going to teach the world? And this is our MIT specialty. So what we decided to do is to align MOOCs with our residential courses. The MOOC that we put on edX is the same course that we do on campus. And that allows us to use exactly the same content in many different ways. So since 2012, I've been running several learning experiments with various degrees of blending. And here I'm putting 3 different categories that describe some of these courses. I've done 5 or 6 different courses every single semester, different experiment. So one of the models is primary, where basically we get the MIT students, we replace the lecture, we eliminate the lecture altogether, we replace it with videos and interactive exercises, learning sequences on edX, homework is all online. We only keep 2 hours of interaction with the faculty. And that's usually very interactive time, a lot of discussion, something that's a little bit more applied. This works better for intermediate and graduate level courses. We've done several graduate level courses. You can find this video online. This is a Nobel Prize winner, Wolfgang Ketterle. He has a MOOC on atomic and optical physics, and he uses the same MOOC with his students. So he doesn't have to lecture anymore. But there's still a couple of hours that he spends with the students. And in this video, he describes his experience, and he calls it transformative. He really loved teaching in this format because he doesn't have to teach content anymore. He can now apply that content to discuss research problems. And this is really what the MIT faculty want to do with a graduate level course. Get a conversation with your students. How do you apply this knowledge to solve research problems? He loved this experience, and he basically said, I'm never going to teach in a traditional way ever again. For other classes, this model might not work. So we do what I call blended. And blended, in my opinion, is something where you blend the activities inside and outside class. So you have a lot of online content that supports the learning inside and outside class. We use this in our introductory physics because in our introductory physics we have a studio format that's already interactive. So we would love for the online tools to support the learning that happens. We do not want to eliminate the interaction. Then there is the supplementary mode where you have faculty that would like to use the content as a supplementary resource. A lot of the time it's homework and sometimes it's other learning resources. So what we really focus on in introductory classes is the immediate feedback. What we want to teach our students is how to solve physics problems. And we use the platform to teach them how to solve physics problems. So really, it's getting that feedback. Are you on the right track when you're sort of through the problem-solving process? Just keeping track of time. How many minutes there? Oh, yes. Great. So this is one point that I want to make. For all our courses, whether they were MOOCs or on campus, our students spend the most time on the platform solving problems. This shows you the average time that a student spends on doing problems. For introductory physics, it's 46 hours. That's about 4 hours per week, compared to video, where it's only 4 hours for the whole semester. This is a course that doesn't have a lot of video. Quantum mechanics is a course where we eliminated the lectures and we replaced them with video sequences. Still, students spend more time doing problems than on doing video. We have about 40 hours of video, so the students spend about 28 hours playing the 40 hours of video at 1.5 speed. This is what I focus on. This is my mission in life, is to put in as much assessment content to help the students build problem-solving ability through online learning. This is how our introductory class looks like. It's a studio format. We have round tables, students working groups of 3s, tables of 9s. There are whiteboards all around the place. A lot of what we would like to see is students spending most of the time doing problems, group problem solving on the board. So this is what we love. This is what we've showed that leads to learning gains. This is what led to reducing the failure rate from 11% to 5%. My goal from blending is to support this, not eliminate it. So I'm not going to an all online, I'm going to a blended mode. We've really used the platform for all kinds of activities inside and outside class. And I'm going to mention these very quickly, but if you have any questions later, I can tell you or show you examples in person. We do a lot of online homework pre-class and after class. This turned out to be the most popular, is the online checker for written homework. And it was a very lucky accident where when we started doing this, we were afraid to move to all online. So we were like, oh, we're going to give you a tool to check your answer, but you can still submit the paper. And turned out to be basically the best thing we've ever done in terms of online learning. So what happens basically is that these are freshmen, and I'm an expert in physics. If I look at an online problem, very quickly I can decide that this is a very simple problem that I can do in my head. Or, no, this is a very complicated problem. I'm going to pull a piece of paper, I'm going to sketch a solution for that problem. Students in that level do not know how to do that. So when you give them online homework, the first thing that comes to their mind, oh, I'm smart enough, I'm going to try to do it in my head, and they completely screw it up if the problem is very difficult. By requiring students to submit the written homework, they're still accountable for the problem-solving process. And now what happened is that the online checker supports that problem-solving process by telling them, are they on the right track? Can they check for the answer? If they make mistakes, they go back to the paper and they can track it, and again, they can correct for it. Students absolutely love this. The faculty love it. We try to do as much of this as possible. We do also a lot of group submission. We do a group submission system to allow students to use edX in groups, so they can sign sign up for a group, go through a sequence on edX, and get grade for that sequence. We have online checker for growth problem solving. Just ask me about any of this after this talk, and I can show you examples. One of the best things that we offer is basically that all resources are in one place. The students absolutely love this. Because this is a very common problem where you give your students 5 different websites at the beginning of the semester, and they hate it, they have no idea what to do. We basically use the Open edX instance to put in everything in one place. And if we have to connect to an external site, it's going to be through the Open edX. Students love this. This is a result of a survey in electricity and magnetism over 2 years, last spring and this spring. And we've been doing the same survey for years. Students absolutely love this. This is shocking. We've seen this the first time. You have to understand, I teach physics. Students hate physics. So to ask them if we want to use a tool that helps them learn, and they say yes, with 97%, is just unheard of. By the way, the course evaluation at the end of semester have not changed that much. It's averaged about 5.5 out of 7 throughout the 5 years. The thing that gets the highest rating from the students is using the checkable answers with the written homework. Almost 95% would rate it extremely helpful or very helpful. So the natural question that we ask is that the students love it, but does it actually help them learn? We've been doing research with Lori Breslaw and Jennifer DeBoer, and it turns out that it matters how you use the online check. So they've done some clustering, and they found that there are 2 kinds of sort of behavior that they can isolate. One of them leads to better performance. And it's things that you guys probably would guess. People that open the homework early, check often, take their time between checks, go one day after another trying to do problem, access more resources. It turned out that the correctness does not matter. Both clusters of students in the end somehow get to the correct answer. But how you get to the correct answer matters. And then the question next is that how can we promote such behavior? I'm not going to take all the time, so I need to let Peter, but because I'm working in this field, I have a huge wish list for things that I know would improve the Open edX platform for blended learning. I would love to talk to any of you about these things. I could just spend a whole hour talking about them, but instead I'm going to let Peter take over, and he's going to tell you about something more interesting.
I can't guarantee it'll be more interesting. Saif was talking about blended learning in the scope of a course. I'm going to talk about MicroMasters, which MIT considers a blended program. And it's blended in the sense that it starts with online courses and then leads to on-campus courses for those who choose to apply for the master's program. Anant talked about this a lot yesterday, and I won't go into too much detail other than the specific things that we're doing at MIT. Our first cohort of MicroMasters students actually took their final exam, their final comprehensive exam, on last weekend. They haven't gotten their grades yet, so I can't say how many there are yet. But we also have another MicroMasters that's in progress right now. And they're taking in-person proctored exams this week. So I'm going to show you some of the things that we've done to enhance the MicroMasters experience. Our courses are delivered on edX.org, but we wanted to transition into a blended experience for these students. So some of the things that we're trying out are a student dashboard, enhanced profiles for students, and we also had some experiments with personalized pricing so that the cost of a course is scaled to the income level of the learner. And then, as I mentioned, we have a couple different models for exams. We're doing in-person proctored exams with Pearson VUE, and we've also done a virtual proctored exam, a comprehensive exam covering the whole series. So yesterday, edX in the roadmap presentation talked about the program dashboard. That's an in-progress work at edX, so we've been actually developing a portal site of our own that interacts with edX.org, partially because things weren't ready exactly when we wanted to, and then also because we needed to pull in some of the other data. So we have things like the Pearson exam grade coming in here, and I'm sorry if this is a little small, but it's from the website. And the basic idea here is the students have a sequence of courses. There's a status for each course, whether they're enrolled, what their current grade is, final grade. And then importantly, we've got a big widget letting them know how far they are in the program. This data that we're pulling from edX also needs to go into the admissions process so that we know what the status of the students are who may be applying for a master's program, either at MIT or with our partners. This is a couple screenshots of the enhanced profile. Unlike edX.org, we took sort of the opposite approach to user registration. It's more like applying to a master's program. We ask lots of questions. We want to know about the educational and employment background of the students. Because we're considering them as potential applicants, as potential campus learners. And we also have a facility to share this information with other learners so that if you're in a program together, you can get an idea of who's in the program with you. On the left here is the learner view. If you choose to share it, this is what other learners would see of you. And then there's a modified version for the staff view that includes the current enrollments and grades so that staff who may be working with an individual learner can drill right down and get that data. We also have a search interface so that staff can search through all the learner profiles. And there's a number of faceted filters that can be applied. So you can do things like find all the students who are just about to pass the course and contact them with a note of encouragement. Or you can filter on profiles and find all your learners who are in a particular geography where there's an event happening. The current messaging feature that we have with this is a bulk email so that you can send out an email to everybody in that group. These are some of the technologies that we've been leveraging to make this happen. If anybody wants to know more about those, I'd be happy to talk about it afterwards. But these are all APIs that exist in edX.org that either the edX team or MIT contributed. The software we use for our portal is open source. It's very customized for MIT, but I'd be happy to talk about it. Going forward, we're planning more programs. I can't say how many yet, but there's a lot of them that are in development. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, we'll turn on the ability for learners to search for and send messages to other learners, so trying to build up some of the social connections amongst MicroMasters learners. And our eventual goal is actually to have some online forums as well, so that, for example, one of our programs is in supply chain management. We could put together people who are in a similar industry into a forum, and they can talk about how supply chain management affects aerospace specifically, or something like that. And then the next two are MicroMasters features that I'm hoping to work with edX on real soon. One is the ability to have electives in the program, so not everybody is taking the same set of courses. And we have to do some work on student records. With the learners who are applying to MIT programs, we have a way to transfer the student data from the MIT MicroMasters to the MIT Master's program. But we're also trying to work with other institutions to get the MicroMasters work recognized and flow into their master's programs. Sharing that student data is still work to be done. And I think that's it. Yes, thank you.
So we have time for some questions. Oh, I might need it.
Yeah, we'll have to get it back.
Questions? Anyone? No?
There we go.
Can Safe show his wish list again?
All of the presentations are being recorded and the slides will be available, but we can put the
That's
wish list
right.
up.
I'm just wondering what kind of role the forums play in the blended approach.
Sure. So there are forums in the course context. We deliver those courses on edX.org, but those forums only last as long as the course does. So we're looking for a way to have some continuity for students who are taking multiple courses. And then the additional idea is to have some ability for learners to design the membership of the forums themselves so that they can do, again, industry-based, geography-based, or content-based forums.
Hi, Anisha Bakaria from UQX here. Really great presentation, and you're doing really wonderful work. Just wondering if the student dashboard is open source for the MicroMasters.
It is open source.
Thank you.
No other promises made, though.
Other questions?
BSD.
Hi, Peter. The student profile, is that a kind of separate app that the students have to register in when they enroll? Do you kind of get them to enroll on a separate site to say that they're in the MicroMasters as well as into
so
the courses?
we try to streamline that as much as possible, but so we have an OAuth integration so they can sign into our application using their edX credentials. Similarly, how you might sign into other websites with your Facebook or your Twitter. But it's still been a bit of a hill to climb to get everyone to register and go through that process. It's helped with the students who have to schedule the in-person proctoring exams through Pearson, because the only way to do that is through our portal.
You are looking for an alternative to Responseware. Have you looked at UBCPI and other peer instruction tool actually available?
Yes, we tried to use the UBC peer instruction tool. We actually tried to use it even in class with the students. Somehow we don't get the same results as peer instruction that happens in person, because somehow getting two people to talk to each other, like there is a lot of unspoken language that sort of really is being communicated that doesn't exist online, and people tend to game the system. It does work a little bit better if you have a sequence of questions, where it gets tedious doing it in class, where you ask a question, you wait for the students to respond, and then you ask them to discuss it, and then sort of respond to it again. If you have 5 of these in a row, you could spend basically 45 minutes and not cover a lot of content. So if you put them in sequence, I would be interested to see how to improve the UBC tool and use it in somewhat an asynchronous, not as synchronous as in class.
Other questions? Wait, Randy, wait.
Just curious, how do you involve textbooks in this? Because for me, I always think of the reference material I took away from my master's programs, and so is it integrated with text? Because the online courses I've taken, I've always struggled with figuring out where it was that information was back in the course, and then when I'm leaving, if I didn't buy a text with the course, I don't have much that goes with me.
Usually our approach is that we have an open source text that is more of lecture notes that we provide for free, and we provide it in terms of as a plugin in edX where you can refer to specific pages from the content, or as a standalone PDF. We try to link to the specific pages at two different levels. At the vertical level, where here's the video and here's the content that's related to it. Sometimes at the sequential level. What's better is one of the courses that I've done with Dave Pritchard. The whole course was an interactive textbook. So we did actually a study that we showed if you bring in a text and you embed assessment within the texts, 85% of the students will read 85% or more of the text. And in my opinion, that's the most effective way to actually take the online text and strip it away and integrate it within your course. But that's very challenging to do unless you start doing this from scratch.
Okay, thank you very much. We're out of time. Now is a coffee break downstairs where the breakfast was. It's not downtown, it's downstairs. It'll be a good time to catch up with these guys if you have more questions. I'll be teaching juggling, so there'll be lots of fun down there. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah. Hello, hello. It's okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. We'll get started in just a second. Let some folks get settled in. We have a short session. I do want to bring you up to speed with some new updates to Studio, but we are a room mixed between partners, like edX partners, and non-partners, or folks that are part of the Open edX community, so I might refer to non-partners really regarding the Open edX community. So I just want to prepare you, and thanks for coming. My name is Ben Piscopo, and I'm a learning designer at edX. I started, I have to confess, 6 months ago, so I am pretty new, and if, I do appreciate your patience and understanding with me. Just be gentle with me. I heard you're going to be a great crowd, so I'm not worried. So today our discussion is about what's new in Studio, and more specifically in this particular session, assessments and how we use content libraries to get us where we need to be with higher stakes courses. So you no doubt have heard about these two things, right? Raise your hand if you haven't heard. All right. So a focus at edX and over the past year has been higher stakes courses that provide a higher touch experience, but still in a MOOC, because we need to scale these courses in a way that hasn't been done before. So our focus is to be able to provide more academic rigor, more integrity in our courses, as well as security in our assessments. So first thing I want to ask is, how many people in this room have created a course in Studio before? Awesome. That's most people. How many of you have created a course and created an assessment, a knowledge check, a quiz, an exam? All right, still quite a few of you. Right. So you know the importance of assessments when it comes to determining whether or not learners have reached your outcomes, what you're expecting them to get out of your course. It's extremely important, and they're pivotal when it comes to supporting the learning design that you've chosen for your particular course. We're going to talk a little about some assessment types, including content libraries, some things not to forget when you're using content libraries. Actually, how many people have heard of or used content libraries before? Okay, a good handful of people, a couple handfuls of people, okay. We'll also talk a little bit about updates to open response assessments and how they support courses like you might expect in MicroMasters and professional certificates, as well as some updated other types of assessments and updates to them that, again, support better courses. So we start with content libraries, and specifically, when you hear content library, it's actually a pretty generic term. It sounds like we're just going to house a bunch of content in there. But really, they're predominantly, almost exclusively used for assessments. We create a pool of assessment test questions that are specific to a topic, and ideally at a particular level of proficiency, and it helps us to randomize questions that are then displayed to learners in a particular quiz or exam. I want to start with just a quick use case here. So Anand Agarwal, our edX CEO, has basically rerun his circuits and electronics course for 6 years and has had very little overhead when it comes to creating new questions for his exams, because you're able to create so many up front and then randomly shift them through in front of the learner's eyes. So this really helps. It's probably requires a bit more time at the beginning when you're setting this up, but can save you a lot more time down the road. Another example, also from MIT, is the randomizing of assessments, but also for cohorts. So within edX courses, you can experience a course for free, but you can also pay and be a verified learner. And in both situations, this course is providing randomized assessments. All right? So not only to protect the integrity of the paid track, but also for the free audit track. So we're creating content library in Studio, but that's not really the end of it, right? Within your course, within the course outline in Studio, you'll need to create a component called a randomized content block. Doesn't really roll off the tongue that nicely, but it is something that you've got to remember if you're going to use these. I do want to show you just an example of what that looks like in a course that I created. It's just a sandbox course, so don't get too excited. So this is the learner side, as you can see, although I'm viewing it as a staff member. And in this particular, a day in the life of this particular sort of a famous American suffragette from the 1800s, Louisa May Alcott. In this particular quiz, I've actually numbered the names or the titles of each of the problems that are pulled in. It's not a recommended practice, but it's just for demonstration purposes. And you can see that out of my 6 questions that I put in there, 4 is displayed, 5 is displayed, and then 1, and so on, right? So these questions get randomized, and that is done through. So within this particular section, we have a subsection called A Day in the Life of, and this is my randomized content block quiz. Again, it rolls off the tongue so nicely. So RCBs look like this, and what you'll do is you'll just hop into it and you'll edit the block, and then make sure that if you make any changes to your content library assessments, that you manually update them in here. Some of these things, some of the steps that I'm telling you, and then also in the notes that I've provided that you'll see on the schedule website, you'll find to be a bit manual, but we're always improving and updating the experience for course authors. All right. I'll let you also refer to the documentation on this too. I think that's all I wanted to share for this. You'd set sort of the count or number of questions that you want to provide, and then it would randomize them for you. Great. Last thing on content libraries that I want to share with you are some considerations. I mentioned that your content library should be based on a particular topic, and that's because at the moment, content libraries don't have like a tagging feature that would allow you to say, this question belongs in this quiz, this question belongs in that quiz. So you'll need to create multiple content libraries. Same goes for beginner versus intermediate or advanced content. You don't want advanced questions slipping into a beginner level quiz or something. You can use content libraries across different courses. You just need to point your RCB component to it. You'll probably get started, like most do, with one administrator. And then if you do have more folks on your team that do need to make edits or update your content, then make sure that you provide that access. So there's a separate access step for your course team. Make sure that you award points, the same amount of points for each question, as it might be obvious to you, but if you're randomizing these questions and one is worth 5 points and the other is worth 10, different learners might get different amounts of points. So these are some really important reminders if you're going to implement content libraries. There are additional reminders in the handout notes that I've provided. All right, so that covers content library. I think the naming isn't very straightforward, but the value, I hope, is very clear. And will assist you in creating better, higher stakes courses in the near future. Another way to maintain the security of the assessments that are in your quizzes is to just time your test, right? So if you as a course author go in and time your exam or your quiz or however you plan to use it, the learner will have the option to choose to start their test or to start their exam. Once they do, the clock starts ticking. Once that hour, 2 hours, in fact, we have examples that provide 24 or 48 hours for their own purposes, depending on the type of questions or project in some cases. Once that timer has gone down to 0, the learner will not be able to see the questions that have been provided there until the due date. So by default, after the due date, your content that was time-bound can now be viewed. In order to tighten up that exam even more, you need to make sure that you do select that you want to hide that, hide the questions and the content even after the due date. So I know specifically, and I have so many MIT examples, and I'm sorry, but in pretty much all of their MicroMasters, I could probably safely say, their exams definitely hide questions after the due date, and the only location that a learner can get their final exam score would be, does anyone know? On the progress page, yeah. So they would have to visit the progress page because in some ways you might think that there's some redundancy in displaying quiz on your outline and that you have a quiz that's listed on your project progress page. But in any case, your quiz becomes a special exam once it's timed. Same goes for virtual proctoring. I'm not going to get into virtual proctoring today. There's a lot of moving parts there, but essentially those exams are timed as well, and they're set up a little differently. Another thing that's important for a lot of course teams is the ability to gate content. I want to make sure that it's clear. We're gating content at the subsection level, if you're familiar, right, with the course outline. And in this way, if you have a course that is built with sort of mastery design at its heart, and you do not want learners to move ahead until they've scored an 80% on a certain quiz, let's say Module 1, they complete it with an 80%, they now unlock the rest of the content. This is especially useful if you have a self-paced course, right? If you have a self-paced course and everything's visible from the start, then you might consider using the prerequisite settings. But keep in mind, this is also a bit manual at the moment. You would have to actually set the prerequisite for all of the subsections of that following module, right? And so on through the rest of the course. The system does allow you to accidentally create the sort of prerequisite loop where the learner just cannot go anywhere. That is a super important highlight that we note in training. So you need to be careful that you, 1, set the quiz as the prerequisite, 2, make this based off of the results of that quiz. Right? Sorry if I'm unveiling some of the hidden manual idiosyncrasies of the platform, but like I mentioned, these items have been noted and quite possibly will get an update in the future. All right, open response assessments. Since a lot of you have created courses and assessments in edX, you might be aware of open response assessments, which really allow us as course authors to ask a question or prompt the learner to enter some response in an open field, right? They also have the ability to upload their answer as a document, or even in some really interesting cases, we have some art courses on edX.org. Newcastle X's Natural History Illustration course is a really cool example where learners are actually drawing birds and leaves and different patterns and uploading taking a picture with their phone and uploading that to the course, right? So they're uploading their work to this particular assessment component. So I do want to start with this use case from University of Queensland, which has a really comprehensive IELTS course. This is the International English Language Test that is taken in many parts of the world for admittance to university. And in this particular course, there is a section on writing and getting feedback on their writing. They actually set it up a lot like the IELTS test itself. I've taken a look. I'm also an IELTS examiner, so I've actually graded this writing test before in another life. So what the learner can do in there, and I believe I've pulled it up as an example. Different teams actually go about designing their courses in different ways. There are a lot of units on this page, for better or worse. Try not to judge, because again, different teams have their own ways of building out their content. But in this particular case, learners can rely on their peers to respond to really how well their writing response was. So in this example, some criteria is described in advance. This is the example from a sample IELTS writing preparation book. And this is where you'd provide your response. What I want to focus on here, especially for people who haven't used auras before, is that there are a number of steps in a typical aura. You can choose to use all the steps, or just one of them, or just 1.5 of them. In this case, University of Queensland decided to allow learners to sort of train themselves on the rubric. So part of an aura is not only submitting your work, but also checking to determine how well your submission ranks based on a particular rubric. So there is a section in auras. I'll defer you to the documentation or course author training. We also have Studio X for training as well, if you'd like to take a look at that, in which learners are going to read the rubric, follow the different criteria, and then assess their peers. It's recommended that you require learners to assess probably 3 other peers, require them to receive about 3 reviews as well on their work, because sometimes a peer assessment can be a little wishy-washy. We have to factor that into the potential score that comes out of a peer assessment. It's not a perfect science, but if you do allow for more or require more reviews, the better the outcome. There's even the option of having a learner review 5 peers and receive 5 reviews. Depending on the size of the assessment, how long it would take, it might work for you. And it's always better to require more reviews. A learner should review more people than they have to receive, right? And that's essentially to make sure that they get at least 3 reviews. You can also do you can also assess your own response, and then receive your score at the end. So, to recap, your auras can be set up as a training aura just by itself. Here's the rubric. This is what these are the criteria that you would need to judge yourself or others based on. Self-assessment, peer assessment, as well as staff grading, okay? But now you're thinking a MOOC is a scaled learning experience. How could we use staff grading in this situation? Yes?
The classic example would be that you submit work in an unpopular MOOC, so not too many learners.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So the classic example would be you submit your work and you've been waiting for days and days, not a review, so you're just desperate and you're frustrated, and you end up flowing into the discussion board and just complaining. So that's when staff grading.
Oh, then the course team would come in and do an override. That's a thoughtful response. I'd say it is possible for a staff member to go in and adjust grades if necessary. You can reset an aura, or you can reduce the required number of reviews. So there are a number of things that staff can do anyway, regardless. But this was built primarily for in our MicroMasters and professional certificate programs to be able to grade verified learners specifically. So if you do have learners who are on a paid track, or if it's a smaller group of learners, then staff grading can be super helpful. One, there's the concern that if you just have peer grading, like what's the quality of the outcome? It's mixed, but it's still pretty reliable. If you have an expert or a TA who's specializing in this field, then you have the opportunity to do some staff grading with their assistance. And make sure that at an administrative level, you plan your course team size and other resources for this purpose, if you use it. There's an example of a hospitality management course, I believe. It's Hong Kong Poly University. In that particular course, they have thousands of audit learners who are following the peer assessment, aura, but their verified learners are doing graded. And I think the last time I checked, and they started in early spring, they had about 60 verified learners. So their small team downloaded those responses, marked them manually, and submitted them with the score, right? Yes?
How can you mix them? I mean, everybody will see that there is a staff grading, or can you say only this cohort gets staff grading?
Yes, based on cohort. So we can actually create two components, one that is for verified, one is for audit. That way everyone gets to see something. That's extremely important. We're going to talk a little more about cohorts in the next session, but that would be one way to display the same assessment but for two different groups.
And does the feedback needs to be anonymized, or can it be non-anonymous?
It can be anonymized.
Can it be not anonymized?
Well, it would be manual. So I mean, do you mean the staff person? No, the peers. No, the peer grading is anonymized. So you won't know who is the one that gave you your score. Mm-hmm. A couple other items to note. We're talking about updates to auras here. So as a course team member, if you do want to check in on a particular aura and see where learners are in your multi-step aura, you can actually take a look here and see where people are. You can also go to the instructor dashboard, take a look at a glance at all the auras that exist in the course, and see the total number of responses, where they are, and so on. Really helps for something like, for an assessment tool like this. Quickly, some considerations if you're going to use auras. You might actually create an entire unit that introduces the rubric that you create within an open response. This is not only an opportunity for learners to learn, to evaluate their responses, or to find out what is correct or what is incorrect, but there's like a metacognitive aspect to this where they're identifying what their responses are in terms of perhaps comparing it to the best possible response. The training step, if you do use the aura training, you can seed a couple examples in there, perhaps a not so good one and a better one, and actually let them choose in the rubric, evaluate it through the rubric and see if they're close to what the professor or instructor expected. Right, so the learning step in auras can be really useful. Be careful, make sure that you set deadlines that are well enough in advance. If you're releasing modules weekly, then make sure that if you're using an aura at the end of a week, you give learners a good 2 weeks for peer assessments, right? Because learners need to come in at their own time and give responses. Peer reviews are better positioned at the beginning of a course. And that is primarily because sometimes participation will drop off near the end of a course. If you do position an aura at the end of a course, especially on a self-paced course, it's quite possible that you'll have a number of committed learners that do not get enough peer reviews. Right? Again, I'm speaking specifically for peer reviews or peer assessments. one note. So that's self-study or self-paced course, but on the instructor-paced course, we find that, and the data shows us that with deadlines that are weekly or the end date of a course is pending or is actually coming up quite quickly, learners actually take action more often than if it was a self-paced course for going many months. Last couple items to note. There's been some updates in terms of the user experience and accessibility using hints and feedback. So your feedback can actually be quite robust in that if you have a multi-checkbox response, you can give different feedback to a learner that picks A and C versus a learner that picks A and D, right? If that's a situation that would be valuable for you in a formative type of assessment, then go for it. You also have the ability to create hints, up to 3 hints. If you find that a learner is wildly not connecting with the assessment and needs to be brought back on track, hints can be really helpful in that way. The new drag and drop, which was mentioned, I think even in Anant's keynote. Yeah. It's pretty impressive. Okay. Has been updated. It is also accessible and can be used or completed on a mobile device. You'll find that more and more of these updates are more mobile friendly. And that brings us to some Q&As. I'd be happy to take your questions and see if I can provide answers to them. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
For the streaming,
Sure.
it is necessary to put the questions on the micro. So
Oh yes. Important announcement. Okay.
until I go with the micro.
Sure. I won't make you run and.
Hi. Thank you.
Hi.
For these complex objects like the aura and others, I think that you are doing a great job, and it's really important that edX is providing those kind of objects for the community.
Thank you.
But for other objects, like you are saying, the drag and drop, and there are many, many other things that you could put on a course. I've seen something that is H5P, that is a web store of components, and it's great. And it works also on phone and so on. Have you considered to make some kind of, middleware, some component that integrates with H5P?
H5P?
Because it's great.
Okay, thank you.
And it supports also XAPI for analytics.
Yeah.
And that kind of work is already done and is diverting you from the great job that you must do. Okay?
I see.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this kind of consideration I think is important, and we do offer partners and course teams the ability to use additional tools like this that if they want to make edits within the course or submit some inline code, there are some risks involved in that. So as edX, as the organization that we are, we don't have the resources to recommend formally that you use these kinds of third-party snippets or tools and so on. But certainly you could, and especially within the OpenX community, you have no trouble doing that. And yes, go ahead.
You were talking about the instructor dashboard that you can see. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
We found that to be completely inaccurate.
Yeah, I know
yeah,
you're
okay.
referring to.
So
but this, I also experienced that. I think it was a bug that got updated fairly recently. So it's worth taking another look at it. It's also a known. It is certainly being looked at. Yeah, it certainly is. And I'm also testing on edX.org and our Edge site, which might be different from what you're experiencing in an open edX distribution, for instance. Okay, all right. Well, we could follow up on that as well. All right, thank you. did you have a question?
Hi, thank you very much
Hi.
for your presentation. My name is Stefania von Abstract. Regarding randomized content library, we have a customer that is using a lot content library in a great way. My question is there an idea or some improvement that you can do in, or are you planning maybe to know, to select some, for example, when I use a content library, I would like to have issue like, for example, selecting the author or selecting some keywords or selecting, for example, this is a randomized content for easy question or difficult question. Is there something improving in this direction to have more, or also to have and or searching in this content is
within the content library itself?
Exactly. Something that is on your map.
So and thank you for your question. Content libraries are extremely important for the future of courses that are on edX.org. At the moment, we're using it to create more security and integrity within our exams, but it's still a bit of a manual process. In terms of updates, future updates, I just go to product and ask them what is on the roadmap. I know that there are some product folks that have done some presentations in these 2 days, and can take a look at those. But they're constantly getting feedback on how to make the content library authoring experience even better. And I know that this year that's important, but I'm sure throughout the year you'll start seeing some more updates to content libraries and quite possibly randomized content blocks too. But I don't have any update information on that, unfortunately. Yes?
Yes, you mentioned the prerequisites, and
Yes.
I have one question that's kind of threefold. And specifically, I've had issues using prerequisites, and I've had 3 of them. Number 1, the formulas don't exactly work. You have to play around to find the exact percentage, and it's not even, I put in 90% or 90 points, and that's the threshold. Like, you have to just game it a little bit and repeatedly test. Second of all, they don't always work, opening it up. And I guess basically that's it. I have problems with prereqs all the time, to the point that when I was piloting it, I had to go back through when students were in and turn off every single prereq and open the whole course up. Oh, the third one is also you have to either refresh your tab or move out and move back in in order for the next item to appear, or the next subunit, or however you set up the prereqs.
I see. No, those are important points and troubleshooting bits in there too. As course authors, we have to take these things into consideration. And certainly there are a number of pieces, like within the course. If you, for example, if you have an issue, like if you have a due date setting or a visibility setting that might conflict with prerequisites, it's important to solve those through beta testing. And if you can catch them before your course goes live, that's extremely important. So yeah, all I can offer is that, you know, take care, like be cautioned that this kind of thing might not work perfectly. And if there is a bug of some kind, then certainly it can be submitted to the Open edX community.
I mean, just to be fair, it's not like there wasn't thorough testing. We didn't set any sort of due dates. It's a self-paced course.
Yeah.
And this repeatedly happens with the one functionality of prerequisites. And having something like a prerequisite is a bare bones minimal requirement for any sort of LMS or content thing, from a design, delivery, and pedagogy aspect.
Right.
And it is buggy.
Okay.
If you guys look into that, have any plans on enhancing it, making it make more sense and more functional?
No, those are really good points. I'll definitely share those comments and thoughts with the product team. How are we on time? We are at about, maybe we could take one more question real quickly.
Thank you. It's about the prerequisite. I'm not sure I understood all the options in there. Is it only based on results of a quiz, or can it be also based on has the person viewed the video, or has the work been submitted, or that kind of things?
At the moment, it is set up just so that if you pass a quiz at a certain threshold, then you have access to that next subsection or whatever was being hidden for prerequisite purposes. Yeah.
So do you think it could be possible that further development go in this direction, like you have to have spent so and so much time on an activity, or submitted your work, or
this is a great feature request. I agree with you. I think that it would be valuable for a prerequisite to not just be based on a quiz. There are many other types of learning experiences that I think are probably necessary to have before you enter another section or part of a course. But at the moment, prerequisites are pretty limited in this way. All right, so thank you very much, everyone, for your time. I hope this gave you a little more insight into what is possible with the platform regarding higher stakes courses. With a little manual work, as we've heard, you are able to provide a better course experience for learners that provides the integrity that us as course team members and our instructors and faculty are looking for. So thank you very much. put this back on. Yeah, same as last time, Ian, with the 10 minutes. It seemed about fair. All right. I think we're just past our start time, so I'd like to get started. Thank you very much for coming to this session. I see a lot of familiar faces, but for a couple folks that entered the room, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Ben Piscopo, and I'm a learning designer at edX. As I mentioned before, I'm pretty new at edX, so I appreciate your, just being a kind audience. I heard you're wonderful people, and I believe that. And definitely, feel free to ask your questions as we go along. Strike that. When we get to a certain point with questions, I'll make sure to move back and forth through the presentation to help you answer those. If you attended the last session, it was on assessments and how to provide a learning experience for credit-worthy courses, much like the courses that are being published in more frequency on edX.org these days with regard to MicroMasters and professional certificates. But in this session, we want to focus on the learner even more. Learner engagement in particular is extremely important in a MOOC. And you don't need me to mention that there are thousands and thousands, potentially, of students that could be in a MOOC, yet it can still feel pretty lonely. There are different types of components, different activities, learning experiences that we can provide to learners, including assessments, that provide more of this sense of community. And that's the focus of this session, as well as to talk a little about the updates to the edX platform that reinforce this, so that support this. Somewhat broadly speaking, community building. In this sense, we're going to talk about features related to cohorts, the ability to use cohorts in a way that's going to provide more of a community sense. Teams, in order to create even smaller groups that are self-selected. We're going to talk a little about peer instruction, as well as the use of content groups to help us toggle visibility within a course so that you can provide more specific messages to specific groups of learners. Again, I do recognize a lot of faces in here, but how about if you could please raise your hand and let me know that if you have created a course in edX before, or if you're part of a course team. Awesome. You're my audience, which is great. So we'll answer the question, why use cohorts? And predominantly, cohorts offer this ability to divide large groups of learners into smaller discussions. This is the case when you do have like tens of thousands of learners, but in any case, they can be really useful for this purpose. If you want to invite global learners into your course and not have to create another course for your blended students or students following another track, this can be really useful. We find that some partners who are creating a blended course experience for their on-campus students get a lot of great insight when they get to not only communicate with their own classmates, but also see what's going on in open discussions that might be course-wide for all learners, right? So there's the ability to create course-wide discussions as well as cohort-specific discussions. And then the free versus paid, which you might have experienced or seen on edX.org. Some of that functionality has been updated so that it doesn't completely rely on cohorts. It's another type of grouping mechanism, but for some time now, we've used cohorts in this way. So there are a couple ways to use cohorts. One is automatic versus manual. With automatic cohorts, it's suggested that before the course begins or the start date arrives, that you actually create cohorts in advance so that when learners enter the course, they'll be automatically sort of spread out into these different groups. Learners don't know that they're in cohort A, B, or C. They just experience course content the way that you've set it up. You can communicate with learners. That's an extremely important piece of developing a course, to make sure that learners know, if they need to, that they're a particular group or that they're being appreciated as a particular group. And as I mentioned, the free and paid option, which as a course author isn't something that I would set up, or perhaps we would set up, but perhaps part of your engineering team. As for manual cohorts, you can also use manual cohorts to split up discussions if you wanted to, but it does focus a bit more on content. And these are pretty similar, but different in situations in which you might want to use cohorts. I mentioned the first one already, but then also, let's say you've got a group of alumni, or if you're in an organization where people have continued to identify with your organization, or you have volunteers from different areas, you might want to provide one welcome message to this group, a video that has its visibility set for this group, and another video for another group. Also, there might be a situation in which you've got a science course, but there are some students that are learning about the implications of politics or legislation that is affected by this science. It might not be entirely what the course outcomes are expected for this course, but you can weave in some of this additional material for some added or augmented experience for those learners. Right? So those are situations when manual cohorts can be helpful. The cohorts put learners in a bucket, but in order for the content that's specific for those learners, and if you're using a content differentiation strategy, then you need to make sure that your content group configuration is also set. So there are settings within Studio that allow you to take a look and see which components you're using, and even unit and component name that are connected to a particular cohort group, right? As an author, you're going to author your course and set the visibility, but if you do want to look at a glance, it's extremely valuable to take a look at the content group configuration page. I mentioned in the last session this particular example, that you can actually randomize assessments for different cohorts if this is a way that you want to go. Again, there's a lot of upfront time and effort that goes into, one, creating randomized assessments, and also providing those to audit learners, if we're going to take this example. But it's totally worth it in the end. So some notes on cohorts. The goal, I guess, as a course author, you don't want to keep creating entirely new courses for different groups. You do want to have the same learning outcomes, generally the same learning outcomes within a course for all learners that participate in it. So which is why one limitation is that, it could be considered a limitation or not, is that you can set visibility only at that component level. So if you have a unit page, you're only setting visibility at that component. So if you do set that, some learners might see nothing in its place. So you have to take into consideration what other learners are going to experience when you start using cohorts. It might be obvious, but avoid making changes to cohorts and visibility of content while the course is running. Really, it's a lot of project management up front that will help you to make sure that your course experience is going to be sustained throughout the entire course life. And also, your cohorts are specific to the course area, whereas other pages that you can actually visit at the top are course-wide. So if you're using Teams, cohorts are not affecting that. If you're using a wiki, or if you're using some other pages, instructor information, syllabus, all of those other pages that you might create are visible to everybody. All right, so that's cohorts, extremely useful, especially for content differentiation and your discussions. But Teams is a feature that edX has created to provide a bit more of a social presence within a course. By default, there isn't a lot of, except for, of course, discussions, there isn't a lot of, hey, this is me and this is my contribution to this group. Within Teams, you can actually, as course authors, create the topics that you'll allow learners to create small groups within, right? And that can be super helpful when you want to provide sort of a 10-group limit, or 10-person limit, or 20-person limit to a conversation. It allows learners to communicate and work on group work. This is extremely important, but they might also want to create a Slack channel off of edX, or use other tools that are off of edX, but they got together within a team. An example would be Boston University's Spanish language course. So it's a language course, and you're learning Spanish, but the world doesn't just speak one Spanish, as I'm sure you're aware of. And there are different groups or different teams, team topics here that display different countries. So perhaps different slang that these countries use. If you're a student that wants to learn Argentinian Spanish, or practice with others, or create a small network of students that are interested in Argentinian Spanish, then you could do that here. It's important that you have a good reason to use Teams, rather than just sort of using it because it's there. There's a little bit of an aged example from McGill University in Canada, where they used Teams to create groups. They called it a group. And this was used to support social impact around different topics. Let's see here. I have an example from Demo X, which was recently updated. Continues to get attention. So in order to demonstrate Teams in Demo X, we also created a number of topics that students who are using edX.org might fall into these different categories and want to meet other people who are actually business students or data analysis or health students. They might have recommendations on other courses on edX, so when they come back to DemoX, they can share those with their smaller team. So just an example of how it can be used. An important note, though, like I said, don't just use Teams because it's there, right? You should have some sort of pedagogical reasoning for it. One partner, University of Pennsylvania, created a course called The Top 10 Social Issues for the First 100 Days. First 100 days of what? Yeah, the new president. Okay, we won't go down that road. But it was a course to get learners to talk about social issues that matter, especially ones that might matter to them individually, that are personal to them. But you'll notice that there's no team page here, and that's because they chose to simply use discussions within the course. You can see this sort of welcome week or section, but then all of their topics are listed down below here. In a pretty decent format as well. They organize the content. I can even open one up for you. So urban food deserts in particular. They introduce this issue. They have an interview with an expert, in this case on food deserts, which is the lack of access to good quality, nutritious food in urban areas. They also provide a very interesting animated version of sort of a typical day in someone's life who might live in an urban food desert, as well as a quick check for understanding. We understand the value of providing this regularly. And updates from the media. Actually, this particular course team pulled in articles discussing this issue, and also very timely. Like the most recent one was April 27th. The 100-day mark has passed, in case you don't follow American politics. And so this course sort of came to its sort of natural end of update, although there's still a lot of activity in this particular course with their discussion down below. So rather than having teams in small groups discussing this particular topic, it is a full discussion with learners from all over the world that can use the features of the discussion, the inline discussion. Yes? Actually, I think well, how about I come to the end of use the last example, and then we'll go into Q&A. I lied, I'm sorry when I said that you can ask questions at any time. Blame me. All right. Okay. I've provided these considerations in a handout as well. You find it on the schedule website. But for the most part, I've covered these points. As always, make sure that you're communicating clearly with your learners that, hey, this is another page outside of the course page area. So make sure that you provide a link or directions on how a learner can access it. The last one that I want to talk about is actually an assessment. So within this assessment, it is peer instruction popularized by Eric Mazur's work at Harvard in the 1990s. Right? So you might be familiar with sort of the research on peer learning. So peer learning or peer instruction actually has a component, an advanced component that you can enable in your course. It was graciously provided by the University of British Columbia. So in your advanced settings, if you're familiar with this area, it's this UBCPI advanced setting. Right, the focus of peer instruction is to provide an engaging experience for learners to learn from each other. An important aspect of peer instruction is that you want to help learners clear up any gray areas in their learning, right? This might not be the best tool to use if you want to ask a very clear cut and dry type of question. You might want learners to help provide an answer, their rationale for the type of answer that they've given. It looks like this. So if you've seen or used clickers in the classroom, they tend to support the use of a poll or creating a poll, multiple choice question, which you can introduce in numerous ways. But essentially, learners would pick an answer, write up why they think this, submit it, and then they would reflect on their peers. You can actually choose how many different peer answers to this question you want to show in front of a particular learner. When they take a look at other learners' rationale and reasons for choosing an answer, some answers are the same and some might be different. Then the learner gets another opportunity to answer the same question. And by doing that, perhaps they pick another answer, or they double down and they just pick the same answer again. It's quite possible. Either way, when they get to the end, they get to compare. And so they're provided with this original answer, sort of the outcome of what learners in the course picked first, as well as the revised answer. In this particular example, you can see that quite a few learners learn successfully from their peers, assuming that the question was worded correctly and carefully and fairly. That's an important one. If you want to try this yourself, there's a great example, an interesting example from UBC that involves dogs and their personalities to some degree, determining just by the face or the look of a dog whether they're scared or angry or they have anxiety. So it's a very interesting peer instruction example. I encourage you to try it on DemoX. There's also an example from UBC themselves where they took peer instruction and used it as an interactive poll, right? I encourage you to be creative with the naming of the use of these tools. It doesn't have to be peer instruction. It can be done in many other ways. So in this particular situation, a learner gets to choose a certain design style for a city. They're presented with sort of the kind of city that they want to make a design for to make it more ecologically friendly to live in, and then learners are sort of explaining their rationale behind their choice. Same thing with Query 101X from the University of Queensland. In their particular example, they are actually using it as a knowledge check. It's very useful as a formative assessment, and really what's underlining this entire thing is this feeling that I'm not alone in this MOOC. I've got classmates that I can help and who can also inform me. So, quite a useful tool indeed. Just a few notes, considerations when using peer instruction. You only award points for doing it, right? So you award a number of points for getting to the end. If they get the wrong answer, that's not really the point of it. They will at the end see what the correct answer is. And if they were stubborn and didn't change their answer and they still got it wrong, that might also be impactful enough, cause enough friction and create a even better memory for the learner, right? So very useful for formative purposes. You can select what to display to learners, as in you can pick random answers that other learners have made, potentially all the same, or you can pick simple, which pulls in one answer from each of the multiple choice options with learners' rationales for each of those. Okay, so that's during step 2 of peer instruction. Make sure to test it out and see how clear your learning gains are. As with any assessment, it really should be a fair and honest and clear question, right? And as always, you can use the insight tools within Studio to take a look and see which of your assessments in your course learners have gotten more often correct or heavily incorrect, and it's worth taking another look at those assessments. All right, so those are my samples and examples for supporting learner engagement. I hope that you can find those and more ways, perhaps off-platform, that can increase learner engagement and build a community. So, thank you. And I'll take some questions since we have. How are we at time? We're still good. Cool. All right.
Yeah. Thank you for a great presentation.
Thanks.
And so great that you highlight peer instruction. I'm really fond of it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's a really cool tool. I love it too.
Yeah, I think you can combine assessment with learning, so kind of formative assessment. So you learn doing the assessment. That's great. I have a question regarding cohorts and teams. If
Yes.
there's any depending on which cohort you are part of, it also has an influence on the team that you see, and then depending on the team, also the peer instruction and the peer assessment.
They're completely separate. So the team page is an experience all learners have. They'll see it the same way, but they'll self-select their own small team, really. So cohorts are only applicable to the rest of the course area itself. So you click back into the course page, and then it would take effect.
Thanks.
Yep. Another question at the back, and ask it once you get the microphone, please.
Are you aware of a functionality that would allow the course team to see all the responses of an Aura, similar to like a Google form? Or do I have to generate server logs and reports every time I would like to check? Because I would like to just make like a buzzword search to see what are my students responding to the most, even in an open text response assignment.
You're saying in Auras specifically?
Yes, in Auras.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the platform still sort of requires you to generate a report, which would spit out an Excel spreadsheet or something like maybe a CSV file or something, yeah. So once that comes out, you could then run a search within Excel or whatever spreadsheet program you're using for certain terms, but it's still a bit of a manual process to do more of the, submission by submission type of analysis that you're looking to do. So, and I do want to mention, while Auras are super helpful to scale this sort of open response experience for learners all over the world, it is just that. You may have thousands, hundreds or thousands, and tens of thousands of learners, and there's simply I don't want to say there's no reason to look at individual learners' responses, but it's just not the kind of activity that our product team might focus on, at least in the very near future. What we do have that can help you with analyzing individual learners' behaviors is the learner page within Insights. And you can actually take a look at who's participating in discussions more, who's watching videos, who's answering questions and assessments, which can give you, and that's connected to a username. So you can find your all-stars in that way, but in terms of looking deep into their specific answers across perhaps thousands of submissions, that's really the only way to do it. Thanks for the question. Take the question over here, and here comes the microphone.
I've got two questions. Concerning the teams, is there any way for a team together to answer a question, an assessment?
An assessment.
And if that's true, is there any way to compare an individual assessment with a team assessment?
At the moment, Teams does not support like an assessment piece where you can actually pull a grade from it. I've heard this question before from partner course teams. It would be wonderful if you could create sort of a group project experience within Teams. So something that I'll take back to our product team. But unfortunately, at the moment, you can't do grading within Teams. I hope that answers both your questions.
Just following on this question, I'd be very much interested if, as a student, I could invite another peer to be part of my team. I may also belong to a larger group. And what would be very interesting is for me to be able to see my own results and see the results of my team as well as my group.
Like assessment results or other?
Yeah, my own assessment results, my assessment compared to my team as well as to the larger group.
This is a great question, and it certainly would allow a learner to be more aware of their surroundings and how other learners are performing. This is I think the type of thing that's in discovery at the moment for our product team, the idea that you can actually see how you're doing within a course. I don't know if it's something that is coming soon. But it would be valuable. The short answer is no, that's not possible at the moment in the platform.
Today at Unisex, I don't want to take too much time, but what we do is we've introduced the fact that you can view your own results. And what we've observed is it helps students. They ask us, hey, I've spent that much time, and it displays that I spent a little less. there must be a problem, you know. And we're like, yeah, anyway, we're just here to help you. It shouldn't be a big deal, but it does help. And instead of forcing them to spend too much time, just the fact that you display the results, it does help them. And we would wish to put them in, not to compare only the group, we do that. They see their own results, they see the results of the group, they see the average, but we'd like them to fight together in small peers. I mean, in small teams, and that would be very great if they could do that by not forcing them to be part of a team, but by inviting others to join their team. So
Sure.
I think it goes the right way, but I hope I could do that as well.
No, it's a very good comment. Would be a wonderful experience. I think so too. And I can note that we will continue to make updates to like the social aspect of learning on edX in the near future. Thank you for your question. I think we have time for another one or two. Yeah, up front here.
Yeah, just like I'm quite curious about, like, now you say like you are going to have like a focus on social learning. Is there anything in pipeline that you can reveal?
I don't know what I could say publicly on this. We do have a guest from product who could comment if you I don't know what kind of answer you have. If you want the mic, yeah.
That's the first part of your question. Anything specific?
Social learning updates that might be coming down the pipeline.
So one thing I can say, so it actually relates more to the last question, but I think it's tied to your question too, the notion of being able to compare performance. We're looking at not necessarily grade type performance, but time on task performance. Actually some very interesting work that came out of Delft recently looking at this. I see you, Udo. And those results look very promising. What we've seen in terms of testing of comparing grade performance, although I love the idea of making it by invitation, maybe that's a way around it, but the impact on the learner of making the course competitive at the grade level varies significantly from learner to learner, and in some cases it's strongly negative. So it's something that we're going to look at testing further. I can say that generally our theme in 2018, above all, is learner engagement. That's the thing that we're looking at, and social is going to play a significant role in that. We've set up one team in particular, just spinning up just now, that's going to be focused on rapid experimentation in the space of learner engagement within the course. So there's certainly going to be, hopefully, a lot more to come in the next few months on this topic.
Great. That's great news.
I'm
Thank
Ian,
you.
by the way.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate it. Getting pretty close on time? Okay.
Thank
I think
you.
this will be our last question.
Yeah, it's just a quick question. Do you have some plan to merge teams and discussion? Because it looks to be kind of redundant, because you have a space for discussion in Teams and another discussion space. By the way, the number of posts are not reported from Teams to, if you look at participants, you look only you will have only the total of posts in discussion, but not the one he posted in Teams. So I was wondering if you have any plans to merge those two elements to have one single customized element.
It's an important observation, I would say, if you wanted to answer that. Sure. Ian from Product, ladies and gentlemen.
So it's a good point about Teams. When I look at Teams, I essentially see a small private discussion forum. I would actually prefer, and this is not something that's actively in the works, but we're at least at the discussion stage, is to make Teams a more fully featured capability with, for example, a co-working, even at the assessment level, for example, team project. I like to think of teams as becoming something along the lines of a study group rather than simply a place for discussion. But I think the discussion would stay within that, the team capability.
Great. Thank you very much for the question and answer. So thank you very much for coming, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. I want to make one quick note that if you're part of Project Day tomorrow, it's in the library starting at 9 a.m. And if you've received a confirmation for training as well, that's in the library as well on the 3rd floor. I'm sure you'll hear another announcement regarding the Project Day stuff. That's in the basement -1 floor. It actually looks a lot better than it sounds, I promise. And looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you.